Seen any number of hearings here on Capitol Hill. James Comey, for example, talking about why he was sacked by President Trump, but nothing really compares to what we've heard today. It has been dramatic, intimate, affecting, surprising testimony, and I think really politically damaging for the Republicans who wanted really to avoid this hearing. They simply wanted Brett Kavanaugh to be promoted to the Supreme Court. It's one of the reasons that they've stuck with President Trump, the prospect of stacking the bench with conservative judges just like him. But here they are on the receiving end of a credible, eminently believable witness, Dr Christine Blasey Ford, who's been speaking quietly, plainly about sexual violence she says she suffered at the hands of Brett Kavanaugh. Now, he denies her allegations, of course, but we've not heard from him as yet. He's yet to arrive at the court. He has left his home, though, in Washington. Now, beyond the painful detail, though, which Dr Ford has been describing, the assault on her at a party in the 80s in a Washington suburb, there is a political landscape here, I think, that is elevating her role in this moment. Remember the Me Too movement. Remember the allegations against the president himself. There have been multiple references to that by committee members. There are also real oddities here that we're witnessing. There are so many men. In fact, it's an all-male Republican committee. So for that reason, they've brought in an outside attorney to actually question Christine Blasey Ford. Now, as you would expect, I should warn you that her testimony, of course, includes descriptions of sexual violence. But here is how the day has gone so far for Dr. Ford.
I am here today not because I want to be. I am terrified. I am here because I believe it is my civic duty to tell you what happened to me while Brett Kavanaugh and I were in high school.
So begins Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's testimony, a moment of courage when a woman's voice, quivering at times, dares challenge the appointment of a well-connected man and judge to America's highest court.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you very much.
Against the din of presidents and senators and the ruling Republican Party, Dr. Ford takes her seat in the small hearing room and America leans in to listen.
I don't have all the answers and I don't remember as much as I would like to. But the details about that night that bring me here today are the ones I will never forget. They have been seared into my memory and have haunted me episodically as an adult.
As she recounts under oath what she says she's never forgotten, you can almost see Dr. Ford as the 15-year-old girl she was at the house party in suburban Washington, D.C., where she alleges 17-year-old Brett Kavanaugh and his friend pushed her inside a bedroom and pinned her down.
Brett groped me and tried to take off my clothes. He had a hard time because he was very inebriated and because I was wearing a one-piece bathing suit underneath my clothing. I believed he was going to rape me. I tried to yell for help. When I did, Brett put his hand over my mouth to stop me from yelling. This is what terrified me the most and has had the most lasting impact on my life. It was hard for me to breathe, and I thought that Brett was accidentally going to kill me. Both Brett and Mark were drunkenly laughing during the attack. They seem to be having a very good time.
Dr. Ford is not on trial. Although faced by a phalanx of all-male Republican majority senators, many of whom have already publicly discounted her story, it feels as though America's attitudes towards sexual violence are.
Not taking, quote, no for an answer.
When senior Democrat Dianne Feinstein summarizes allegations by other women against Judge Kavanaugh, Dr. Ford is momentarily overcome.
End quote.
Last weekend, Deborah Ramirez told the New Yorker magazine that Judge Kavanaugh exposed himself to her at a drunken college party when they were both students at Yale. Yesterday, Julie Svednick's lawyer released an affidavit alleging she witnessed at house parties in the 1980s efforts by Brett Kavanaugh and others to cause girls to become inebriated and disorientated so they could then be gang raped by a lineup of boys. She says she became a victim of one of those rapes where Brett Kavanaugh was present.
Brett Kavanaugh is going for a seat where he's going to have that seat on the Supreme Court for the rest of his life. And if he's going to have that seat legitimately, all of these things should be investigated, because from what I experienced firsthand, I don't think he belongs on the Supreme Court.
While Judge Kavanaugh denies all the allegations against him, Senator Feinstein wants to remind the hearing that Dr. Ford is not on trial.
This is not a trial of Dr. Ford. It's a job interview for Judge Kavanaugh. Is Brett Kavanaugh who we want on the most prestigious court in our country? Is he the best we can do?
We believe her! Outside the room, supporters of Dr. Ford shouted messages of solidarity.
God bless America.
Defenders of Judge Kavanaugh gathered too to push for his promotion to the Supreme Court bench. Their support echoes that of the president, who yesterday, in a Broadway-worthy press conference in New York, acknowledged that the allegations he's faced himself of sexual misconduct have prompted his support for Judge Kavanaugh.
Well, it does impact my opinion. You know why? Because I've had a lot of false charges made against me. I'm a very famous person, unfortunately. I've been a famous person for a long time. But I've had a lot of false charges made against me, really false charges. I know friends that have had false charges. People want fame, they want money, they want whatever. So when I see it, I view it differently.
With what degree of certainty do you believe Brett Kavanaugh assaulted you?
100%.
100%.
Much of the questioning of Dr. Ford is hinged on how well she recalls what's happened, hence the large map and questions over where the party might have been held. But at times, her memories painted a painfully detailed recollection.
What is the strongest memory you have? The strongest memory of the incident, something that you cannot forget?
The laughter, the uproarious laughter between the two, and their having fun at my expense.
You've never forgotten that laughter. You've never forgotten them laughing at you.
They were laughing with each other.
And you were the object of the laughter?
I was, underneath one of them while the two laughed.
Now, Dr. Ford, no matter what happens with this hearing today, there are millions of victims and survivors out there who've been inspired by your courage. I am. Bravery is contagious.
But this moment is not owned by Dr. Ford. It is a moment of unflinching politics beyond her control. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says he's unconvinced.
What happened to her, I don't know. Why don't you believe him? What is it about him you don't want to believe?
He, Judge Kavanaugh, gives his version of events next. So Dr Christine Blasey Ford has now finished her testimony, which means, of course, next in the stand, next at the hearing, will be Judge Kavanaugh. He has, as we understand it, he's left his house, he lives in Washington, D.C., he's making his way to the hearing. There were suggestions earlier on that the only conditions under which Dr. Ford would agree to testify would be that he was not present in the same room at the same time. It seems they have acquiesced to that request of hers. But I think, look, the bigger picture here is this is an issue now that the Republicans need to manage beyond the personal experiences of Dr. Ford and indeed of Judge Kavanaugh. They were prepared to fight and die on this hill for Judge Kavanaugh. But the way things are working out, unless we hear something really extraordinarily compelling this afternoon, there will be real questions as to whether or not he should be allowed to sit on the United States Supreme Court. I'm joined now by Matthew Miller, formerly of the Department of Justice, who is happily somewhere dry and warm in Washington. Matthew, can I ask you first, what do you think we're likely to hear from Judge Kavanaugh this afternoon?
I think you can expect that he's going to come forward and say what he did in the television interview he did earlier this week, which is that he denies this strongly, that he doesn't certainly deny that that she was ever sexually assaulted, but he'll say it certainly wasn't him, that he's never sexually assaulted her and never sexually assaulted anyone. Because remember, while we heard from Dr. Blasey Ford today, there are 2 other women who have come forward on the record, as well as others who have made anonymous allegations against Brett Kavanaugh, and I think he's going to have to answer all of those in his appearance before the committee this afternoon.
Of course, he denies all those allegations, but what do you think of the Republican committee members' chances of trying to, if you like,